Hey guys, it's Ryan here at Mall Domestic Church. I am here in one of my kids' bedrooms with all the pictures and everything, but I wanted to come here and do this video today, and this is just where I can do it. So this is a video today, a collab. So this is a collab with a woman. Her name is Victoria, and her channel is called Victoria Rosado. So I'd love for you guys to show her some love. Go check out her channel and subscribe. So this video is about the vocation of marriage and motherhood, and we have 9 questions we're going to be going over. So let's get started. So the first question is, what is vocation? Well, in the Catholic Church, we have 3 vocations. Sometimes people say 4 because one of them can be kind of split up into 2. The first one is the priesthood and or religious life. So, or rather the priesthood could be one and then religious life another. The second vocation is the vocation of marriage, and then there's the vocation of the single life. So in this video, we're going to be talking about the vocation of marriage, which sometimes includes the vocation of motherhood. And a vocation is a way in which that God really helps you and shapes you along your path towards heaven. So, and in the vocation of marriage, spouses, they help each other grow in holiness. They receive graces from God for their vocation, loving each other and having the gift of sexuality from the Lord. And of course, having children, if that's something that the Lord has gifted them with, and then educating those children. Also, while on this question, I want to talk about what makes a marriage valid. So like when you get married in the Catholic Church, what makes that marriage valid? So years ago in the diocese that we were married in, or we had our marriage blessed in, the bishop was giving a talk, and we talked about 4 things, but I remember 3 things specifically that are needed to make a marriage valid in the Catholic Church. Freedom, so you have to be free. You have to have the intention of being faithful. If you are unfaithful later, that is a different story. But at the time of the marriage, you intend to be faithful. And then, of course, you intend to be fruitful and be open to life. And he told a funny story. It was kind of funny, but not really. About how when I think he was a priest at the time, and a father came in with his, older daughter and a man that she was going to be marrying, and they were all having their discussion and everything. And the priest, the bishop at the time, he was a priest at the time, wanted to talk to the woman alone. And after talking with her, he realized fairly quickly that something wasn't quite right. And so after talking to her, he asked the father to come back in, and the young man, and he said to the father, "You need to give this young man's goat back to him and take your daughter home," because apparently the father was treating his daughter for a goat, and that is not a valid marriage because she was not free in this situation. And obviously it's been really hard to go through the other things of feeling faithful and fruitful when you're not even free to be married. Now, with all of this said, my husband had spoken in something he was doing. I can't remember where it was. He was working for a parish at the time, but he was speaking with the canon lawyer, and they were talking about a lot of different things. And one of the things that came up was about validity of marriage. And the canon lawyer was saying how you only need a very basic understanding of these things for the marriage to be valid. So sometimes people can get kind of scrupulous and say, well, maybe I didn't have this, or maybe I didn't have this. But it really just takes a very basic understanding of being faithful, fruitful, and free to have a valid marriage. Of course, I am not a canon lawyer. I'm just kind of sharing what I've learned as a Catholic woman. And so I wanted to add that in under this, what is vocation? Okay, so question number 2 is how we knew that we were called to the vocation of marriage rather than the other vocations. Well, unfortunately, I wasn't Catholic when I was married to my husband civilly, and we were married civilly, and I never even knew about vocation. Later on, I became Catholic, and my husband had not yet come into the fullness of the Catholic faith yet, and we had our marriage blessed, and I was so excited because then I was able to receive the Eucharist. I was not catechized well. No one even told me that my marriage had to be blessed to become to receive the Eucharist when I became Catholic. So, but I found out later from a really wonderful, devout, holy Catholic Polish priest. But anyway, so but it was a couple years later when I found out what vocation actually was, and I was like, oh man, I never had the chance to discern my vocation, whether I was called to, the religious life or marriage or whatever. But then one day, obviously I was called vocation of marriage because I was married, but I was watching something, a documentary or something, I can't remember, on Saint Gianna, and it talked about letters between her and her husband and how they both knew that they were called to the vocation of marriage because they had this great desire for affection. both physical and also for the affection of marriage, like being with this person and being loved and loving them. And I knew in that moment when I heard that, I was like, oh my goodness, I was definitely called to the vocation of marriage, because I had that so deeply within me. I always tell my husband, I'm like, I love that I can call you like 100 times and you'll never think I'm crazy. But I try to refrain from that. Maybe like 4 times. That's the most. Anyway, okay. Number 3, how am I helping my spouse to get to heaven and vice versa? I love this question. So years ago, when my husband and I, we had been, it was probably like a few years into marriage, and we were in Steubenville, and he was going to Franciscan to get at that point he was getting his undergrad in theology. And I remember thinking that my husband was very different than a lot of other people. He was very like moral and desired righteousness and wanted things to be good and holy, and he had like high expectations and all of these things. And I remember, because I came from a really like kind of toxic feminist background. I mean, that's what the culture kind of is, but I came from that background and just in the world. And so with all that said, I was struggling a bit trying to understand my husband's personality in a new way, in the way of vocation. And my Titus 2 women, which if you don't know what that is, if you read in Titus 2 in the Bible, it talks about older women encouraging younger women to love their husbands and their family and so on and so forth and be good homemakers. So I had a woman, I called her my Titus 2 woman, and she said to me, whenever your husband says something, try to really pray and think, Lord, what are you trying to tell me through my husband? Instead of viewing him and what he says through what the world has told us about men, that they're either stupid or that they're carnal or all these things that are not true. And yes, maybe sometimes some men have certain qualities like this, but men have wonderful qualities. And I feel like for a long time, women have not been taught how to see that. So my Titus 2 woman, she was really encouraging me in that. And so anyway, so one day I came across this poem about Saint Jerome, and it's called The Thunderer. And when I read that poem, I remember thinking, not all of it reminded me of my husband, because some of it was like him being angry and stuff, but some of it just reminded me of my husband because of some of the really good qualities he had that were very masculine and very different. So what I did was I printed the poem out, I framed it, and I put it in my kitchen near my dishes. So in the morning when I woke up, or when I was doing dishes, or whenever I was in the kitchen, which was a lot, and maybe I was having a hard time understanding where my husband was coming from, or just trying to remember to appreciate the qualities that he had. My kids are in the house now. They were on the trampoline. Now they're right here. So anyway, I would look at that whenever I was kind of struggling, and I would read it, and I would think about how this man became a wonderful and holy saint, and that he had really great qualities. And I really wanted to see what those qualities were in my husband and to really value them. So I find that for me, my husband has really truly made me a better human being. Like, he has raised the bar on like my standards of what I think that are good and right in life, and the basics, even around the house, or like just so many things. And I'm so thankful for that. And I actually made a video about how I've learned so much more about God through my husband, and I'll link that in the description box below if you guys want to check it out. But and then for me, vice versa, I always laugh because when he was going through all of his like education to become, he's a director of evangelization faith formation in our diocese, and he had his bachelor's and his master's in theology and catechetics, and then he got his doctorate in ministry. And when he was going through all of that process, with me being a convert and with me of all my history, I had like a lot of stuff, I had like a ton of questions and a lot of confusion. So when he was going through all of that training and all of that education, I would ask him so many questions, and I was so confused. And I would always tell him, I'm going to prepare you for anybody that you come across in ministry. I also help him, I think, to be empathetic and to be patient, because I tend to like to relax and like enjoy not doing a ton of work. I think it helps him to go, okay, I need to be a little bit more patient with her. Also, in the early years of our marriage, I was not the kindest person, and I did a lot of things that were not good and not kind. And over the years, we had to really work hard to learn how to just like build a really godly and loving relationship from a beginning that wasn't so great. And so through that, I think that he has learned a lot about patience and forgiveness, and so have I. And I have learned so much about being able to understand like endurance, like sticking through things and being patient. So we have helped one another so much. I think, like I said before, just to become better like human beings, but also on the path of holiness. It has been so great. And I think sometimes people think that the path of holiness is supposed to be like this path of like perfect beauty, but a lot of times the path of holiness is one that's rugged and hard and difficult, but we're giving so many graces through the vocation of marriage, and it's just beautiful. So that's number 3. Okay, so number 4 is kind of long, so I'm going to read it. How does my vocation with my husband encourage or strengthen the aspect of my vocation that involves motherhood? One thing that he has really helped me with in motherhood is that, like I said before, he does have high expectations and he has like a really good moral compass. And I feel like because he has that, it has helped me to kind of raise my expectations in like how we should live our lives and encourage our children. And when I say high expectations, I don't mean it like we expect you to do all this stuff, but rather like let's expect holiness and like let's expect virtue. And then not only expect it, but then like help to build that within our children. So my husband, he'll come and he'll be like, this is what I think we should do, or I'd really like the children to do ... So he'll tell me like the big idea, and then I go and I find all like the stuff, like, okay, how are we going to do this? Printing out all of this, and we're going to build virtue, and we're going to focus on this virtue, and we're going to pray about this virtue, and we're going to do. So like, it's been really helpful that he has given me kind of like so many, I feel, blessings in that way. But the biggest thing too in that is for me to be able to see that as a blessing, instead of it being like, oh, he just wants me to do all this stuff and now I have to go and do all this stuff to figure it out. Because in the early years, that's how I behaved. And now I don't see it that way at all. When he comes home and tells me something, I feel truly blessed and thankful that he can have the insight and to see it. And then I can take that and apply it and work within our family life. And being able to do that without expecting a lot. I also have a video about breaking my addiction to appreciation, and I can link that below too if you'd like to see that. But anyway, so those are the ways I think that he has just really encouraged me in my vocation of motherhood. So the next question is, what does the vocation of motherhood mean to you? I really love this question too, because I always think of the vocation of marriage, including motherhood, of course, but there's also other aspects of the vocation of motherhood. And I think it's important to talk about that, like not separately, but kind of separately, to talk about what that means. I hold motherhood very dearly. I think it is so important, and I don't take it lightly at all. I take it pretty seriously. Like, we have a lot of fun around here, and like there's a lot of joy, but I find that like I really think that I am completely here for my husband and my children. I am very home-centered. I don't make a ton of appointments and tons of schedules because I want to make sure that I'm always available to everyone. And because of our specific walk in marriage, my kids have made shoes out of Frisbees, and now they're walking across the floor and it's like, shh, shh, shh. So if you hear that, that's what that is. I think they've made snowshoes. I'm not sure. Anyway, so when we first had our first child, my husband was in the military and he went on a deployment like right away. And then when he got out of the military, he went to become a full-time student, and he went like full-time plus. Like, he was so busy, and then he would flip cars on the side. And so from very early on in motherhood for me, I was doing pretty much everything with the kids. So from early on, I put them to bed, I bathed them pretty much. I did, all the diapers. I was up all night with them. I mean, all of it. I did all of that. And it was one of the challenging things for me was that comparison was really challenging for the vocation of motherhood, because I would watch movies or I'd hear of other women and like they were doing everything 50-50. So like husbands and wives were doing everything 50-50. And that just wasn't my specific marriage. And it really affected me. And I always was in this place of comparison. And then I had people in my life always telling me how, he should be doing this or he should be doing that. And then it really would make it more challenging for me. But this was our specific walk and what we were doing. And when I finally got to a place where I kind of accepted that for our family, this is what we were doing. And I let myself stop and think how I really felt about it, and what I felt what was the good in what we were doing. It just it didn't bother me nearly as much as it did when I compared, or when people were always telling me how it should be instead of what it was. And then it was interesting because when we finally got to a place, excuse me, where my husband finished school and we were more settled and stuff, he did a lot more. Now, I still do like everything in the house. Like I do the dishes and all the cleaning and all the laundry, and I cook all the meals, and my kids, now they're older, they're starting to help out with cleaning and stuff. But my husband, and I don't need to say this, but I do want to say it, my husband works a lot. He's a hard worker. And when he comes home, he works all... Yeah, he works all like the landscaping. He does stuff with cars. Like he's a busy, hardworking man. And so it just doesn't bother me. But the early years, it really bothered me because I felt everything should be 50-50. I compared and I listened to all the stuff people were saying instead of really evaluating like what was going on within our family. And, and I could have done a little bit better being able to stop and think like, okay, this is my vocation. Like, what do I need to make sure that I'm doing so that I'm taking good care of myself? But I'm going to talk about that in a few questions from now. Another question is it a positive thing, the vocation of motherhood? Which is kind of an interesting question because I think that's kind of like where we want to come from. Because whenever we're doing something and we know it's a good, I think because especially we're like in a capitalist society, we want to make it really look good so other people will want to do it too. And I think I went through that in the early couple years where I really wanted to make sure that it was good and I wanted to show only the good stuff because I wanted other women to want to do this as well. But for me, that didn't leave a ton of space. And this is just for me. This might sound really silly to anybody else, but for me, that didn't leave a lot of space for Jesus. Okay, let's just be honest. I needed to make a little bit more space for Jesus. I had a priest once tell me in confession when I was really concerned about all the people that I wasn't saying just the right thing to because they needed to be converted. He said, "You are not the Holy Spirit. That's not your job." And I was like, oh. So why I'm saying all that is to say that sometimes I think we want to make our vocation look really good so that other people will be like, oh man, I could do that, or I want to do that. But I've come to a place where I found that this is beautiful and good and worth it because Jesus says that it is beautiful and good and worth it. And that's why it's wonderful, and that's why it's good, and that's why it's positive. So that's like when I think of is the vocation of motherhood like positive and like good, that's how I feel about it. Okay, question number 7 is how do you stay positive, or excuse me, how do you stay joyful when things feel like they're falling apart? I can really understand that. We went through some really, really hard years where I was going through a lot of stuff emotionally. I was battling with depression. I was having babies every 2 years and nursing, and it was just, and we were moving, like it was just a lot was going on. But again, I'm going to go back to what I said before. The comparison and other people telling me, oh, this is so hard, or like, it should be like this. Like, to me, that was the hardest thing to deal with. Like, I feel like it could have been a lot more joyful if all I had was just support. Like, you can do it. Like, when we were living in Ohio and I was with my Ties to Women and I was around all these women, like, living, like, holy lives and not falling into, like, self-pity and like all the things that and like victimization, things that I think women, we can really struggle with. When I was around them, I just didn't feel like bad for myself. I just like put my big girl boots on and worked and tried hard. And yeah, it wasn't perfect, but I was like all about just like trying to live a holy life and do better. And as soon as we moved away from there and my husband started working in different parishes and stuff, I really struggled because there was just like hardly any support. There was a few people that were supportive, but even that, I just felt like there was a lot of like, just like I said before, just a lot of like, I feel like I have self-pity, or I'm like kind of victimizing myself, or like all these things that I really like tap into. Like before, I would really tap into when I was struggling. And so for me, that has always been the hardest thing. Like I don't really struggle with that hardly at all anymore because I've worked a lot through like not listening to other people about it, or like comparing or anything like that. But in the early years, man, that was like such a hard struggle. So when things feel like they were falling apart, a lot of times I felt like that because I had this other picture in my head of what I thought it was supposed to be like. And then when my life didn't fit that picture, it was really, really challenging. So with that said, on a practical level, like when I really feel like things are falling apart, I really have to reevaluate like what I'm doing. So I have to really reevaluate and ask myself, like, are you doing too much? Are you expecting too much from this age, like of a child? Or maybe are you comparing like your marriage, or are you you know what I mean? Like all these like different things, like I have to kind of evaluate, okay, what's going on. I also have a thyroid issue. And so when I really get into a place where things feel like everything's falling apart, I have to say to myself, are things really falling apart? Or maybe is my thyroid off? Or am I struggling because I haven't slept in a couple of nights and things like that? So for me, it's been a big deal. And also like when I'm feeling really good, I had a friend once say to me, write a letter to yourself when you're feeling really good and keep it. So I used to do that. I would write a letter myself. Everything's so great. And then when I was feeling really down, I'd read that letter and oh my goodness, that's right. I do feel really good sometimes. It's true. So for me, it's about being practical and really evaluating and all of that stuff. All right, question number 8 is how do you handle discipline? Or like for me, okay. So this is probably this could probably be a whole other video. So, in the early years when I had my first son, I read a book called How to Raise Almost Perfect Catholic Kids or something by the Pop Check. So I read that book and it like totally transformed everything I thought about parenthood. I was so excited because it really it helped me to dive into the understanding of human dignity in children and oh my goodness, it was good. And then I really just focused on what human dignity was, that, it can never be taken away. And that we have a worth inside of us that it has nothing to do with the world or what people think. And so the more that I learned about Catholic teaching, about what it is to be a human being, it really helped me to understand that I really wanted to form my children and I wanted to walk alongside them in life and to really support them so they can come to a place where they're living a holy and virtuous life. And from that living of a holy and virtuous life, then ultimately they will be happy. Instead of kind of what I heard growing up from everywhere, that was we just want our kids to grow up happy. I thought that was so elusive because happiness is you can have it 1 minute and then, so I really focused on treating them with respect, apologizing if I lost my temper, talking with them a lot, communicating, focusing on what their individual temperaments were, parenting accordingly, forming them and helping them to have a strong identity in who they are as a Catholic child. Because I feel like being rooted in who you are as a Catholic person is so beautiful because it gives you this really great heritage that connects you with people throughout all of time. And so all of these things for me had to do a lot with formation. We talk a lot about their father is from Nicaragua and my family is predominantly Cajun, which, goes back to France. So we do a lot of different things like that to help them be grounded. So you're probably why are you talking about this? We're talking about discipline. But I feel there's so much foundational, so many foundational things that go into place before you even get to discipline. So it's really more, for me, it's really more about formation and helping them know who they are and where they are in this world. And then knowing that they're really supported and that you're going to walk alongside of them no matter what. No matter what. And I did talk about understanding themselves as a Catholic person, but also understanding themselves as a human being created by God with, dignity and worth that can never be taken away and all of these things. And when they really grasp all of that, and then after that, and when they get a little bit older, then helping them to understand that whatever they see and whatever they do really affects them. And they're the ones that are going to have to work through that. And if they see something that's really yucky, I will be there to help them and talk with them. But in the end, they're the ones that are going to have the nightmares or I see it. Very nice. Oh. And then when all of that kind of takes place, I have found with our oldest, he's now almost 13 and God bless you. God bless you. I have found that discipline is not needed as much as communication and explanation and so on and so forth. Of course, that's totally different at different ages. Like I said, that could be a separate video, when they're younger, really figuring out what works for them specifically at different ages. But roughly, I would just generally, I would say it really starts with the deep understanding of formation and who they are as humans and where they come from and all of that. So hopefully that makes sense. Okay, the last question is, do you feel you have lost a part of yourself for becoming a mother? My answer might not be really, oh, you look so pretty. My oldest daughter put tons of bows in our little baby girl's hair. You look great job. Anyway, so my answer might not really resonate with a lot of women, but like I got married really young. So I met my husband when I was 16. We got married like a month before I turned 19, so I was 18. And then I became a mother at like right after I turned 22. And so for me, I was going through so much. My little guy's playing with Legos right here, so you're gonna hear him making all kinds of noises. But anyway, I became a mother pretty young, and I also just, like, I had a really fantastic sense of self yet. Like, it was still developing in me. And so I think in the early years, maybe I did because more of like the culture, like, made me feel like I had to have all these things in place inside of myself to feel like I have a sense of self. I feel like my children they just helped me grow so much in holiness, like, and they helped me like recognize that it's not all about me. And from that, it like brought so much joy because I don't think that the point of life is to think all about us. Like, we're in a community of persons. So for me, maybe in the early years, like, I don't even know if I ever felt that way in the early years either. I guess not. I guess that's the easy answer. I guess for me, I just kind of saw it as like, as I started to welcome each person, I have 6 children, by the way. As we welcomed each child into our family, I just felt like now they're here and life includes them. And this is a new step in my walk as a person. I know when I was going through depression, I would really have a lot of like hard times with figuring out a sense of self for me, but that really didn't have to do with my children. It more had to do with the fact that I was just really struggling with depression. And my thyroid issue, which really helps when I have my thyroid medication, which just kind of helping me feel better. So that's probably not the best answer, but I'm just trying to be really like authentic with you guys and share how I feel. And if someone does feel that way, like, I don't think anyone should feel bad about that, because like when we have a child, like our things do change a bit, and for some people a lot. And it's about growing and letting ourselves develop and grow. So that's basically it. So those are the 9 questions. Again, I hope you will go check out Victoria's channel. And if you come over here from Victoria's channel, welcome so much. I'd love for you to subscribe. And I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. I'd love to hear from you guys. Any of these questions, if you guys think that you'd like to answer any of them in the comments, I'd love to hear your thoughts on them. And I hope you guys have a beautiful and blessed day. God bless.